Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey.
Happy New Year!
Welcome to 2025
Yeah.
and welcome to our podcast studio in North Ogden, Utah.
Yeah.
Happy to have survived another New Year's Eve because, it's a wild party with us.
Well, everyone who knows us knows that it is a big deal when we can make it to midnight. And I think we almost did.
I think. I don't remember seeing it roll over. But
yeah.
There were fireworks. We were home and we typically choose a quieter, kind of New Year's Eve. But it was nice to make that switch. It's been fun building up to the new year. Like there's a lot of stuff shifting, right?
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work stuff going on for us that changes, in January.
Yeah.
So excited about that.
Yeah, we really, really are. So, this is our first broadcast for 2025. It's a White Hat Wednesday. We had talked about that we would be starting White Hat Ways. We need to get a couple of more pieces put in place before that launches as a specific replacement for Wednesdays.
Okay.
So, okay. Well, today
we're kind of going big picture as we do on occasion. And obviously the first of the year is a good time to really look at, kind of take the wide look, big picture. I think in my description of the podcast, I said, let's zoom out. And in particular, I shared a post on social media back on the 11th of December. And I asked people, I said, if you could solve 3 problems in the buy here, pay here industry, what would they be?
Yeah. A lot of people chimed in and we got a lot of answers around what would I change in my dealership.
Right. Which is not surprising. That's what dealers think about all the time.
Yeah. And I think that the core of the question is that in an industry,
Yeah.
what would you change? Not in a delership so much. I mean, because there are threads that go that weave into a dealership, but as an industry in a whole. And when we saw a few other posts that went out that kind of talk about some of the things that we were thinking about, and then there were some that piped in on that understood that we were talking about the industry at a whole, and so gave us some really good feedback about what dealers out there believe is challenge. What are the challenges? What are the things?
And I think it's obvious, it's understandable that we as coaches would have a different perspective and in the work that we do. And I've been a dealer, like I've been there, owned a finance company and dealership, and I've been around LHPH and Buy Here Pay Here, and so I've been in it. I was a 20 group member years ago, and I just think when you have that kind of wide view, and there are people been in the Buy Here Pay Here space longer than I have, right? It's just, but I think my perspective as a coach allows us to have a little different view, kind of the problems that are common threads across the industry with dealers, like kind of what creates their struggles, and then just looking at the whole thing, not just dealers, but consumers, vendors, associations, the whole thing, just looking at the whole thing across from a broad lens is, what problems do we see? And you could come up with, I probably could give 5 or 6. I said, when I shared that post, I said, I've kind of identified my top 3. I know, like, if I had a magic wand and I could solve these problems, I know what my top 3 would be. So I have a blog post that'll go out later today that speaks to these 3 things in some specificity. And so I got that put together, and it was kind of the first of the year was a good time to kind of just back up and let's look at what's been accomplished. Let's look at what kind of the road ahead is. And if I think collectively as an industry, certainly as White Hat Way, as we move forward and invite people to conversations and try to, work to solve these various things, I have optimism around, many of these things. It won't be magic wand and you solve them overnight, but it'll be, you can start to chip away at some of these things. And we are. I think in 2024, you saw some progress around some of these things. So number one on my list is data.
Okay.
Right?
So, everyone knows you're a data nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cute.
Gotta get some nerdy glasses, maybe. Yeah.
I have some if you need some.
Yeah.
So, we know you're a data nerd, and so I want to understand why this is an important thing to you. Like, what are the problems this causes? And what are, as V8 is one of the things with and things that we do with our dealer clients. Data is one of those things that we tackle. And so it's like, why do you propose that that's one of the problems that gets solved? And what have you seen happen to a dealership, a dealer, whatever, when that problem starts to get solved?
So I think the wide look on that is, so why did I start V8 back in January of last year? It's because we meet a lot of dealers, especially younger ones, right? Newer ones that are kind of what I call being on an island. They're stuck on an island because they're running their business. They're trying to figure it out. They're asking questions out on social media, but they really don't have a lot to lean on, like real hard numbers and real data that they can lean on that says, this is how people do it. This is what's successful, right?
So are you talking about, okay, yes, I get that. And I kind of see, just from watching a lot of this happen, is it's one thing for a dealer to have really solid data in their dealership. It's and so if a newbie is asking a question on like buyer payer success or whatever, that a dealer can come in and say, this is what I see. But when you can start to overlay and weave in and see, where certain things are consistent, where certain things are not consistent, and when I say consistent, this is one of the big reasons why is, are we comparing the same things?
Right.
And also, is one person's data based on their business model going to apply to yours if you have a different business model?
Well, that's part of what happens is that's why we need it. So there's a couple different angles on this. Let's talk about first, like, if you compare our industry to other industries that have deep analytics and, pick any, you could Wall Street, investment world, they have deep analytics around what they do. Our industry is less sophisticated, has been, and it's unfortunate because we originate in our industry billions of dollars and we solve an important problem.
Yeah.
And dealers are still in 2024, now 2025, are still winging it a little bit out there. They're just having to be kind of these renegade, fearless entrepreneurs and go just try and ask somebody on social media after they've already made an expensive mistake, how do I solve this problem? And data is just the first thing. It's like having some real numbers, because somebody else said it. I mean, you don't have to hear it just from me. Others have said on our social media posts and this and that, they talk about, it's not enough to just kind of guess. I mean, you're going to make some expensive mistakes early on if you don't, have some mentorship or some way to get some help. And I think numbers, even if I'm a coach, I can't, it kind of, remember when we shared on the podcast weeks ago with the thing that we heard, I think it was Paul Hoyt said to us about, that, what's the phrase, that diagnosis without examination is malpractice. So how do you examine?
Well, just to preface, Paul Hoyt is our senior advisor
and a business coach.
And a business coach. Yeah.
And so he's that's
and
kind of
you'll be introduced. All of our listeners out there will be introduced to him at some point.
And Paul is also something of a data nerd, right? He's but I think the point here is that we can't begin to examine. We can talk loosely around things that anecdotally we heard a guy at the auction say or that somebody else said, but until you have some real data to measure, because we can't manage what we can't measure. And so if everybody will measure and use the same ruler to measure what they're measuring, then we can begin to draw some conclusions and share those conclusions with others. And I just think when I look at our industry and I look at DMS number 1 and DMS number 4, and man, they're speaking a different language.
Well, you run up against that monthly. With the V8 data, and it's just like, okay, in order to compare apples to apples, we have to strip this number of this, we have to add this to this, and then everyone can come together and have a conversation around something. They know they're comparing the same thing.
And we're pretty good, with what we're doing in our V8 summary report each month. We're at a 6 or 7 out of 10. We're pretty good, but we got a long ways to go in terms of what can be done to clean up the data and align it up so that everybody's seeing the same thing and it can just make better business decisions.
And it's not about everyone having the same business model. It's just about, what are the points, the numbers that we're looking at. And you were giving me an example the other day about recon. And how different dealers add different, like their transport fees are added to recon.
Right.
And so, not everybody does that. And so when you understand that it's like, okay, what are all the elements you have in recon? Then we can strip out the transport fees and we can say, this is what recon looks like.
And we have our way of doing that, kind of a rudimentary way of getting there. You kind of have a reference guide off to the side of our summary report that people can refer to within their circle, their group of members.
Yeah.
But it's less than perfect. And I think I'm not so Pollyanna that I think you're ever going to have it perfect and that you're ever going to, because you're always going to have the renegade dealers. You're always going to have these software people are not always going to cooperate at an industry level. And so
that kind of goes to the crux of one of our goals for this year is to be able to take that 6 out of 10 and move that needle up to 8 or 9.
Sure.
For people that are wanting to look at specific things. Sure. It's like we are really, really comparing apples to apples. And so that it does. And I listen to you talk after you've had conversations, and then you bring it to other meetings that you have. And it's like, it really starts to shift the conversation.
Yeah.
And make it more meaningful.
So let's think about if you're a new dealer and you hop on Facebook and you say, where can I get some help? And a lot of people chime in and say, join a 20 group, right? And so that's why. Because,
and yes, we are like fans.
Yeah, of course.
Like deep fans of a 20 group. Jim was in a 20 group.
I know that process.
And know that whole, the relationships that are built and the deep dives and things like that it's just a really beautiful platform.
Peer group and peer comparison. And it's why we started V8 so we could have an affordable alternative to a 20 group. So you see these people say, join a 20 group. Yet we have some idea of what 20 group enrollment is across the United States.
It is such a small fraction of all the dealers.
So 20 groups are wonderful, but it's not being adopted at that. Now, is it value for those people that are doing it? Yes, it's a wonderful value for them, but it's not only reaching a real small sliver of the industry. And so that's comparative peer group, which you still want numbers that correlate,
are apples to apples. And one of the things that you've done this year is like they're validated. And we've had dealers that have come in. It's like, I've never been asked for something like that. And it's like, get used to it because it needs to be validated.
That's the kind of ecosystem we're creating.
That's the kind of ecosystem. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, and that kind of flows into another one of the problems. I don't know if you're ready to move on to the next
there's
one.
one other element that I want to touch on inside the data piece. And that is that there's comparative, there's peer group stuff, which we're talking about with dealer or 20 groups and V8. That's comparative, being able to compare to other dealers and have those numbers be meaningful, right? That's one thing. But there's also, if I'm a dealer myself, being able to string together the data that helps me track let's start at CRM, lead management. So now I've got inventory and inventory matching. Then I've got sales. I've got underwriting, which is going to happen at some stage of that process. You might have pre-qualification and whatever, but for a dealer to have the data to string all the way from their CRM
based on their business
lead
model,
management, sales and closing, underwriting, now into collections and portfolio performance, and ultimately into financials and cash flow and static pools and the whole thing, like having enough data so you call me a data nerd, but as somebody who doesn't want to commit malpractice, I need to have information in order for me to be an effective analyst. I need to connect all the pieces. When the thing is not connected, then there's a limit to what conclusions one can draw. And so we're just left to guess, and that's no way to run a business.
Yeah, well, and it really does end up being, and this is, a conversation for us to have later, is this whole idea of, is it working? Well, you're throwing the spaghetti at the wall, and it's like, well, some will stick. And it's like, how do we get better at eliminating guesswork on a lot of this? And and that's one of the things that, as we've the time that we've spent together in the industry, is you see, like, the guesswork is, well, that's as good as we're going to get, is guesswork. And that I've heard from different people that are in numbers is that, good luck trying to get something solid that dealers can all kind of get behind and incorporate or whatever. But so part of what it is with this data that we're looking at is, how do we come to you instead of you come to, like, how do we help a dealer wherever they are in their business be able to string things together in a way that is giving them a really clear picture, also compared to other dealers too.
And we're going to continue to cooperate with the DMS providers, because the DMS is the system that's in the best position to solve a lot of these problems for dealers. And that's why last year we asked for the White Hat Way portfolio summary report. DCS went out there and did it. We Mike Downey reports that AMS has also done it. We just haven't had a chance to verify and test it over there. So we look forward to being able to show that theirs is functioning in the same way. And there will be others. There are others that are still in communication with us about solving that. And I think the fact that we asked for it in June and we still don't have it is an indication of, it's not a simple thing. It's not like you put some programmer over in the corner for a couple hours and you come out with it. It's a little bit tricky, but it's like, we're going to persist on that, because we just see that dealers don't know. And the V8 thing has been a real kind of a microcosm to be able to illustrate this thing that is, it's wow, it's a bigger problem than folks might realize. Like, just the fact that dealers can't reconcile their principal in their portfolios, like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense. We're going to persist. We got to just, this is something White Hat Way can do on behalf of the entire dealer community. And so we're going to just persist. It's like, it's something that we recognize the challenge in a way that some of the DMS people apparently don't. And so it's something that we just got to make sure that we can highlight, what that looks like and what problems it solves.
It was interesting. We were meeting with our senior advisor yesterday, kind of wrapping up what it is that we've accomplished this last year and where we're going for next year. And we were talking a little bit about this, this issue and our Paula's comes from business. He doesn't come from the automotive industry at all. He comes from business. He's been an advisor for businesses that have big businesses. And to have to say, okay, so we're a little bit behind and we don't, that this is it's a little bit, it's different than this kind of thing. And even saying things like, it's not everyone is in the cloud or whatever. And then, him saying, okay, so we can do this and this and this. And I had to interject the other day or yesterday that some of the big DMSs buy here, pay here is a small fish in a big pond for what it is that they do.
Sure.
And so being able to get get some of the bigger ones to pay attention and do this thing, because buy here, pay here is not their bread and butter. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can say that some of the bigger ones that we work with, I can get to the numbers. I mean, they have the reports, and I can now coach a dealer on how to do it. And I think, one of the things that's happening later this month is we're hosting our first V8 mastermind, right?
Yeah.
And that's only for V8 members, but we have a dealer who's coming forward to share, hey, this is what we've compiled in the way of data. This is our business plan to grow us from where we are to where we want to be. And so we're going to have, and the guy CPA is going to be there, and we're going to dig in and have our fellow members come in and say, what's wrong with this plan? What would you change if it were yours? And, just so but you need data to be able to have any meaningful conversation around that. Like for me to say, is your 2025 plan within reach? You have to kind of look at the last 2 to 3 years, right? In a way that you can trust the numbers to be able to know what's achievable.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if you want to have me there or not, because it's like my job this year is to ask why.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of why asking.
I'm
Why
thrilled for
do
you to be
you
there.
want to go from A to B? What will it bring you?
Good.
Why is it important to
Please.
you?
Yeah.
How will it change your quality of life?
Sure. Yeah.
And one of the things, tangent, sorry, I'm going down it.
Yeah.
One of the things that, we talk to dealers, it's like, I want X amount of locations and I want and they do it. And then they're like, nope. And then they constrict again. So, and that might not be like across the board that it's not a wise thing to do, but it's just, maybe they weren't comparing apples to apples. They didn't have the correct data to be able to, or they didn't have the policy procedures. So it's like you open up the book and every single location is doing the exact same thing in the exact same way and all of those kind of things. So yeah.
Well, so my tangent on top of your tangent, which will be a small one, is
lucky you.
Well, it's just like, and here's an example again around the data. Is what we're seeing through V8 especially, and this is all new information to me because I don't get a chance to see. We see it with our own clients, but we don't see it in a broader, counts, if you will. But this idea that we have dealers in our V8 thing, we've been running kind of a simple cash flow snapshot and how many accounts they are away from positive cash flow, and for everybody, all the members that submit the expense information, and what it's showing is that, suppose you're a dealer at 300 accounts and you're building a business plan to get to 450. Well, what we're seeing is some of these dealers that have 1,500 accounts are still 150 accounts away from their positive cash flow. So
which changes the conversation.
Like, are we sure that's the direction we want to go? Or are we sure that's going to solve the thing? Because this is kind of, and this, again, you need numbers in order to really draw any meaningful conclusion. So that's why we've talked data frontwards and backwards.
Let's next.
It's important.
Next
the next one to
me,
I would say that we can kind of tie to the same thing. It would be third on my list in this blog post is ego. So the ego, if we this is not directed at anyone. This is broad brush across an entire industry. And we know from I've worked with car dealers for 20 plus years, and I've been one. And I just know that part of what makes a buy here, pay here dealer successful as an entrepreneur is this sort of go mentality, fearless, figure it out, march ahead, take the risk, learn from it, go to what's next. And sometimes what happens in that is you meet a lot of people that kind of have their mind made up that they know how to do it
because it's worked for them,
or they think it's working.
Okay.
So it's like they believe that they know how to do it. And sometimes it just takes dealers, again, collectively. If I just think about across our buy here, pay here industry, if I look at our industry from 30,000 foot view and I say, what is it that keeps this industry from advancing? Part of it is dealers feeling like they know what to do and they don't go get help. The low enrollment in 20 groups, the low participation percentage wise of people who go to these conferences, state, national level, the number of people that go is low. So what does that tell you? Oh, I don't need to go. It's not going to be worth it to me. I know what to do. I feel good about my plan. So the first thing for me would be back to the comparative things like, you're maybe sitting on an island and you may be making some mistakes that could be avoided if you met so-and-so, and had a chance to get exposed to these other ideas. So I'm sorry, friends, Facebook can only take us so far. Like we can't.
And I've been watching some of the conversations in Facebook, and it's just like,
there's a whole lot of malpractice going on there. It's just because we're and I've seen people.
Okay, again, define malpractice based on Paul. Paul is like giving a diagnosis without actually an examination, and is considered malpractice.
I'll give a shout out to Brett Buick. I saw that Brett kind of took that position with somebody who was asking a question. He chimed in and offered some suggestions, and so Brett said, "There's a lot more to learn here."
Oh yeah.
Right. So if you just stop there and say, in order for us to really, answer, there's a lot more to learn. And that's what's challenging for folks like me who see that stuff and you want to chime in, but it's like, wow, there's just way too much to know.
And when we were talking about this morning is because we just talk about buy here, pay here.
She seems
all day,
resentful.
Every day. I'm not at all.
I'm picking up a tone.
No, is that ego for a lot of people is like, it's like, button chests and like, that is a thing, but that's not the thing, the crux of the thing that we're talking about. It is, it's like, I got the answers and I can do the thing. And we see that happen and people answering stuff. But some of it is, and I appreciate this, people asking the question is in the right direction. And it's about understanding. And it's interesting to watch. A lot of times it's people that are asking the question frequently are new.
Yeah.
And so they really don't know what it is that maybe sometimes I'm not even asking the right question.
Sure.
But because we do go through that, it's like new dealers don't even know what questions. They don't have any idea, but it's the I should know better, or I'm so far down the track that I'm embarrassed that I don't understand these things. Or, you asked it. We talk to dealers all the time that are like, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this. And that's the ego. That's the ego part we're talking about. It's like, shed that. It's okay to ask, and it's okay to not, or to realize that what you're doing maybe is not the most educated way to, or not educated, but it might not be the best way to do it. There's a lot of other ways to do it, or that you're not getting a complete picture in the decisions that you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say somebody else could speak to this better than I do, because a lot of there are two people that I can say that I form most of my opinions about leadership. And so a lot of what we're talking about here with ego ties back to leadership. Why? Because when we bring ego to the thing and we think we know how to do it, and we're not prepared to turn to, whether it's our team or mentors or whomever, then we're running the risk of not being an effective leader. We're operating
in our own businesses.
Yeah. So it's the thing about you can't manage what you don't, right? So, but it's also when in order for us to lead a business, a mission, whatever, then we have to be able, we're going to be more effective when we can draw on the other resources that are available to us. And that means accepting that we don't have it all. And so the other person that I feel like is a heavy influence for me fairly recently, the last couple of years, a guy that I know, actually knew him from high school, and he became a 3-star general.
Jerry.
And in Jerry talking to us about leadership, I learned so much from him about leadership in a really short conversation.
I mean, talk about someone who understands the principles of leadership
at a level that few people get to experience. So we're talking about somebody who was the commander of U.S. forces in Japan when Kim Jong-un was shooting missiles into the Sea of Japan.
We really need to get him on the show and talk.
We will. But I think what I learned from Jerry and what helped him ascend, and ego, aside, like he's just like,
he doesn't have an ego,
me. But all I was doing was driving a team of very effective people.
What he doesn't have a big ego, but what he knows is he knows how to pull people together and find the answers
Yeah.
and solve the problems.
And so back to ego, I could march into a room and say, I know how to do this. Everybody shut up. Here's step 1, 2, and 3. And if it doesn't work, because there's somebody over there in the back row knows that I don't know, right? And so we march ahead and it fails. I suffer in terms of credibility as a leader with my team. Whereas if you can get the whole group bought in on the strategy, then so there's different elements, right, to what we're talking about here. But I think if you go find Simon Sinek's, just look up Simon Sinek, Sinek, on leadership. You'll find a ton of stuff on YouTube. It's totally free.
He's one of our influencers.
And just if I could give any one thing to dealers stepping into 2025 is go consume a lot of that stuff that Simon Sinek talks about in terms of leadership. And so there's because in order for us to build a successful business, and you can apply much of what he talks about, you can apply in your personal life too. It's like, how do we become effective, as leaders? And so this is why ego, to me, is the first thing we got to be prepared to do is put ego aside.
Well, and it's an interesting thing, because when I first started with you, and we would be working with clients or even on the morning show, but mostly because it took us a while before we got to that after I joined, is that when you use the phrase "we need to," is there's no room for other people's ideas.
Yeah.
There's no room for, I may not know all the information. And so it's like to change, even just to shift that, because I see this an awful lot on some of the Facebook, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And it's like, I'll tell you what'll solve your problem. You need to do this. Or, and that kind of energy you bring to trying to mentor someone else doesn't leave room for, I'm wrong, for one thing, or I may not have all the information for another. And so you've just like drilled into me. It's like, please don't use, you need to do this. It's like you have to do this. It's, we advise that you do this. From what we've seen, we advise you to do this. And if it's like a really, really like, it's like right on the edge of need to, it's like, we strongly advise that you do this.
Let me give you a quick example, and it can kind of help people get ready for a podcast we've got coming up. I think we decided on next Friday, the 10th. By the way, this coming Friday, we have Brent Carmichael. Who's going to step into
and
the
he
chair
starts
of
on the
Director of
following
Education
Monday.
Yeah. And then the following Friday, we have Kristen Acosta from a dealership in Iowa. And so here's my point of this. When we talk about, so you talked about saying need to, or you should do this, or, I had to have a conversation with some of our V8 people. So in a V8 meeting, think about what a V8 meeting looks like. Virtual meeting of dealers in different pockets of the country. They have a comparative report to look at and talk about. And sometimes dealer 1 will say to dealer 6, you need to do this. I don't care what anybody says. You got to have more down payment, right?
Or whatever.
So, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting over there saying, you better look a little closer at those numbers, because, sometimes I have to stop them. You're telling people that they should do a certain thing because that's the way you do it and that's the way you believe it should be done. But can you let your ego aside and say, maybe there's another way to do it, an additional way? Doesn't mean your way is wrong, but maybe there's an additional way to do it. So this is, again, an example of and I ask our V8 members when they come to the meeting, bring an open mind, right? Bring a beer too if you like, but bring an open mind.
If it helps you keep an open mind,
right,
bring a beer.
Right. So, but it's ego. It's like ego has us, and it'll fool us. It'll take us down an errant path that can sometimes be expensive. And so, it's why I think as a collective thing that it's on my mind when I watch. Do I have ego? Of course, we all operate from some level of ego. It's just that when we can, in order to be effective leaders, and in order for us to make a good business decisions, and especially if you're really looking to scale your business, then in order for you to grow, you got to be able to involve the team. You got to get them to buy in, and that usually means not running it like a dictator, and I have my ways, and this is the way we're going to do it, and you can live or die by that. But unfortunately, too many people die.
I love that you. It's interesting as I've sat back and I've observed how the conversations, because I am by far not a subject matter expert in buy here, pay here. There are other things that I have a deep
I'm still learning, by the
understanding
way.
on it. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that, that even with those that advise you, if they're telling you this is the way you need to do it, this is a cookie cutter, here's the thing, throw the box in, make sure you fit in the box, that also is a dangerous thing to do. And I see that too, where it's like, you need to do this, and you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Here it is, and then gone.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's a hard. That's
so it kind of ties back to our conversation around trust and everything that we talk about in terms of white hat way. It's like your question about why. Like, could I show up at a dealership and say, if you follow these 27 steps, you'll have some degree of success. And if they follow that to the letter, will they have some degree of success? I think it's a high likelihood. Now, is there other things to consider? Like, this is the part of our challenge in this business, and I think this will always be the case. I can't write a 27-step business plan for you that's going to work the same as somebody else. So, we have to consider what the strategy, direction, mindset, there's just a lot of things to consider when you step into strategy building and deciding how you want to build your business. But I think the things that we've talked about already, having good data is going to help us know, asking why do we want to do,
you're going to hear that a lot.
So I think in 2025, as we step into, we want to ask a lot of people, why do you want to do what it is? Why is your strategy this? Talk to us about what is to be accomplished here. What does it gain for you personally as the dealer owner?
Yeah.
I mean, because one of the things, as you know, has been a real thing for me is I want to help dealers build their business in a way they're not tethered to it. Right. So that just means, so is this going to create for you, if I can get you to step off the hamster wheel for a minute, talk to me about your personal life and what you want your personal life to look like. What's your lifestyle going to be?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I mean, we work with a lot of dealers, and it is such a challenge. So many dealers are so tethered to their dealership, They're not there. They're not the sales team. They're not the collections team. They're high level manager. And to get them to leave the building for a meeting so you can have like a real, when we're on a Zoom call, we don't know who's listening to a conversation in the building. And so sometimes it's like, hey, can you get out of how freaking hard that is for some dealers. It's just like, can you once a week or every other week get out of the building for 2 hours? And have a conversation.
And without them saying it back to me, what you can hear going through their head, but Jim, I can't be away for an hour. The business will fall apart. And I would say, well, why don't we spend an hour talking about that, outside the building? So
anyway, we've got a couple of comments, and I'd like to, before we go to the last one, George Spat, social media in general and Facebook in particular show us classic examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Unfortunately, many have gone so far as to actually label themselves as consultants.
Right.
Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah.
And then Rudy Enriquez, good morning. This industry is full of doers and not engineer nerd types.
True.
The nerd will question and try to optimize, tweak, and think and never get anything done. Doers just shoot from the hip and stuff gets done. And then continue on, but bullets go errant too. So it's like finding a nice combination of doers and nerds.
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah.
So Rudy's kind of drilled in on this thing about that I have talked about. And I remember way back on social media and LinkedIn before you and I met, having conversations that I chimed in on something where people come forward and say, execution is everything. Right. And I think, I don't really buy that. And part of the reason I don't buy that is because I think, first of all, that discounts the role of the innovators and the visionaries and the people who are kind of have the grand vision. Now, sometimes this person who's a visionary in the grand vision is not necessarily the same day-to-day doer.
Frickin' men.
Right.
One of the companies that I worked with, worked for, that the president, CEO, founder was a creator.
Yeah.
And he knew, because he'd been in business long enough. It's like Jerry Martinez, like all of it. He is the creator. And so he can map out and frame something,
Right.
and then he gives it to doers.
Yeah.
And so, in a whole, the whole entire ecosystem, yes, execution is like so important,
Mhm.
but execution is not everything.
Right.
And it does. And as we continue moving forward with some of the things that we're working on, Jim becomes more and more the creator.
Yeah.
And then we have the who that are the executors.
And I'm able to shift more into the other thing you can find from Simon Sinek is the golden circle. So I feel really fortunate to be at this stage of my career and had discovered this concept that it's snapped in place for us. The whole concept of why, like start with why, which was a Simon Sinek book. And so this is kind of, it drives us, and it helps us to, I think back to Rudy's thing is like, we put ego aside, and we can draw on the contributions of all of those people at the table, whether they're, the people who execute, or whether they're the idea people, or, whatever. It's like, let's draw from all of them. Let's don't shut them out and say, our idea, we got this. Like, we know what we're doing over here. Right. Yeah. And so this is kind of the ego thing. One last thing. And we're 40 minutes in, folks.
That's
we don't usually go this
We've
long,
got one more that
I
we
think
can
this is
just
an important
kind of touch
conversation.
on.
So the last one for me is there's like 3 or 4 things wrapped up in the same thing, but it's really a thing that's always been something for me, and that's around messaging. Right. It's like, how do we message ourselves better?
I've seen a lot of conversation around this. There's messaging can go into so many different rabbit holes. Right. And it did one of the strings that I read through was about, okay, so how do we develop trust in our community? And, this is something that we're beating that drum all the time. And it was really great to sit back and listen to dealers pipe in to like, here's what I've done. Here's what I've done. And it is the messaging is, it's like, that's the broader concept or broader context is like, and because it's all about that. What kind of message are you delivering to your consumers, whether that be the message is they always follow through. The message is that, whatever their social media is showing, the message is, but it's about what's your message.
So maybe it helps to take it out of our industry for a minute and just think about, to me, it's the separator. It's like, what is our unique value proposition? And additionally for us is with White Hat Way, we ask dealers, we think dealers who are going to be most drawn to White Hat Way are the ones who are playing a very long game. They're interested in making the investments now to establish a reputation, a business that is sustainable. Okay. So why is that important in the subject of messaging and marketing? Because when we can draw people to our business that are the right fit, they're the consumer that's a good match for the way we do business. Okay. So if I take it out of the car business, I just say, we got 2 dry cleaners across the street from one, Bob's and Mary's dry cleaners across the street from me. And if they're both running ads that say, we clean best shirts for $2.95, and somebody over here saying we clean shirts too, it's like, so what separates you? Why would I come? You clean shirts, you clean shirts. I got to make a choice here. What's going to make me decide where to do business? So back to our dealership world is like dealers. This is a broad brush, folks. This is like, when we look at what we see across how dealers advertise, it's too often hey, we have cars, right? So, okay, well, most people who have a used car dealer's license, if I drive by your place and I see that your sign says Bob's Used Cars, I expect you're going to have cars. The question is, why should I turn into your entrance? Right? It's like, so this is kind of just farm boy marketing here, right? So this is kind of, as somebody who, I had a real interest in marketing, had some business classes in school, and had an interest in marketing way back, and in particular around messaging. And, keep in mind, I was a partner in a business of retail and sporting goods business when I was 24 years old. So this goes back because I'm way past 24 now. So anyway, it's like the idea is it's something that I've paid attention to throughout my career and all kinds of different businesses. And I think if you're playing a long game, and for me, the blog post is around this idea of I'd like to help dealers across this industry get better at selling trust. Okay. So that's, we're working on some very specific things with White Hat Way to be able to go forward with some marketing that will go into their markets and be able to sell them as trustworthy businesses. Because this is one thing that White Hat Way has in common. This is one of the things that drew Pastime, LHPH Capital, Dealer Re to us. They're longstanding providers. They have built their own businesses. Part of their pillar principles are trust. They want to be trusted providers. So one of the things we look forward to being able to do is tell the story about why they're trustworthy, right? So this is where White Hat Way can do a better job of telling that story. Right. And so this is part of what I see my career being. And this is part of what, as we step into 2025, I look forward to dialing in more of that messaging. And until then, look, dealers who aren't going to be part of a White Hat Way program, I still want to see them learn how to get better at telling their story and earning trust. Why? Because our poll said that 98% of dealers believe that being trusted translates into more sales. 98% of dealers said that's the highest percentage we've ever had on any poll we've ever put out there. And it's like 98% say I believe that if I'm trusted, then I'm going to sell more cars.
I was as you were kind of walking through that and around the trust, the word that came up to me is like when we can really communicate that we are an asset to communities. That we are an asset. We are not a liability. Right now, if you're looking assets or liabilities of businesses in communities, buy here, pay here is considered a liability more than an asset because of predatory, all of that kind of stuff. And so, it's the same thing as a paycheck loans, title loans, pawn shops, predatory things is that they are not considered an asset. They're considered a liability. And are they helping people get better, or are they pulling them into staying on that poor credit merry-go-round? That kind of thing. So I was like, was thinking about that. Trust and asset are very closely tied, and to be an asset in your community and an asset to your consumers, your customers, it's like, how do you do that? How do you become an asset to them? And it's not just so that they can take, it's like, well, of course I'm an asset. I give them a car. That's it. It goes, yes, that's part of it, but how do we, in general, in our communities, because this is something that we focus on White Hat Way, it's not just about the dealership. And once you step on our property, you're going to be treated. It's like, how is this dealership in a community something that is an asset to the community at large?
And the other thing that we have working against us is in messaging. If I say, okay, I like what Jim and Michelle said, I'm going to go out and try to sell trust. Now they hop on social media and run a Facebook Live and they say, trust me, I'm a used car dealer. Right? It's like that classic old joke. Trust me, I'm a used car salesman, right? It's like when you're trying to sell yourself, it's not that you go out and say, I'm trustworthy. So let me get as specific as I can about this, because the way that we believe that you build trust, and this is why we say it's a long game, you start making trust deposits. Okay. And so the way that you do that is you're transparent. You got to get ready to be transparent. And if you're transparent and so people don't like what they see, then you're going to hurt yourself. So when I say being transparent, it's like, let them know so let me say, let's Jim's used cars. And I'm a good guy in my market. I really, truly care about my customers and I support them. Okay. So I think one of the key ways that you earn trust is because customers don't, on the day they're buying a car, they're with you whatever the online experience is, it's getting shorter and shorter. I used to say they're with you an hour and a half, well, now they can do most of their stuff online, and the actual time they're in the building taking deliveries is a short period of time.
Less than a half an hour. Yeah.
So what is the experience of the customer leading up to that? We've been selling them. Maybe they just moved to town. Maybe they moved here 6 months, a year ago. They don't know us. And so they're going off of our marketing. They're here doing business, but of course you're trying to sell me a car, or if I'm Jim, I'm trying to sell them a car. So the best way I begin to earn trust is show the customer that I mean what I say. I do what I promised after delivery. I follow through. This is the thing. People talk about follow up in the car business. I would ask you to replace that language with follow through. So follow up is sometimes in the sales capacity of following up and hey, you still in the market for a car? That's what people think about follow up. I'm talking about follow through. And I'm talking about when I can show and let my customers tell that story. They promised me this before I bought the car. They then followed through and did what they said they were going to do, and they continue to do it. And not just for me, the people I work with, they had the same experience. So now those people can tell that story. You can get better at telling that story, because now you're making trust deposits, and you're showing, how do you become trusted? Well, by doing what you say you're going to do, right? And showing that you mean what you say, and that you really are in it for the long haul, and you really do take care of your customers, because it's you can say it on the front end of the purchase, but you're in a sales mode, and you're and so it's really, once the customer buys, that's your opportunity to show, hey, we're still who we said we are. We're still following through on the things that we promised you we were going to do. And I want to show up and be proactive about that. I want to do it before they ask for it. Right.
Rudy piped in and said, I don't think trust can be sold. It's earned over time. The actions you do sell, your reputation to the public.
Let me add to what Rudy said, though. The part I'm really suggesting here, Rudy, is he's absolutely right. I think trust, I put it in the same category as respect. Like you have to earn it. But once you earn it, let's get better about telling the story.
And what we're also, White Hat Way is not just about how do you earn trust of the people that step on your lot.
Right.
It's about how do you earn the trust of your community. And so we're also looking at how do we engage with our community, so that with other businesses in the community, with people that might not need a buy here, pay here, that it's like, oh, these people are an active part of the community, and we trust them. We know who they are because we see their stuff. They're out there doing the things. We like who they are. It's like, how do you not like someone who's out there trying to actively help or whatever? And then it's known, liked, and trusted. And that when you trust is a byproduct of other things.
And I think one other thing you could tie to trust is this definition of integrity that we see, that people say. One definition of integrity and character is that you do the right thing even when you think nobody's looking.
Yeah.
Okay. So so how that relates to us in the car business in particular is, I would ask you to think about the word disingenuous in this context, because we miss an opportunity when we go out and we try to tell this story, and we try to have some goodwill, but it gets wrapped into a sales event. So I say, come down and get a free hot dog. And while you're here, that we're going to hit you.
Or if you do a test drive, we'll give you a free hot dog.
So that's really a promotional event. But I'm saying, we see dealers try to go do some sort of promotional event, what we would call a goodwill event, but they end up wrapping it in something where they invite their salespeople, and the salespeople are out there giving coupons off of buy a car. It's like you turned it into a sales event when you had the opportunity to just earn some goodwill today, and not sell cars today. And so that's where we missed the boat, because we just come off like we're salesmen, and our real mission is to get in your pocket.
Well, right? and Rudy is like, true. How to communicate that you are worthy of trust. And so, the topic today was as a industry in general. And, we like as in an industry in general, that what we're seeing and what we're tackling as White Hat Way and coaches, consultants, all of the things, is one, being able to help dealers compare their numbers
Mhm.
in a way that it's like it's a true comparison. It's apples to apples.
Right.
And then this trust thing,
Mhm.
I know that was the end part. This trust thing is how do we find a voice as a industry? And NIA data does a great job on that, and there are others that are out there that are really trying to it's like, how do we that they're working on CFPB and all of those kind of things becoming trusted. We're looking at this from a kind of a different angle. It's not just about regulatory agencies, it's communities. How do we start to be able to frame a buy here, pay here dealer, or a white hat way buy here, pay here dealer is an asset to communities? It isn't that they are. And so that's one of the things we're working on, where and as a byproduct, people like the CFPB and all of that will start to see we're coming at this from the other side too.
Mhm.
That it's not just us, how do we protect the dealers, and we know we have to protect the consumers, and how are we being fair to everyone at the table, and honoring and respecting that the governmental agencies are about protecting people, but we're out there teaching dealers and helping the industry to be able to rise and in communities, and that it's like a different angle towards this, understanding that there is a huge need that's being filled,
Mhm.
and that those that are doing it with that how do we differentiate too,
Right.
and like these are honest, hardworking.
Mhm.
They're going to do what they say they're going to do,
Yeah.
and that they are an asset to the community. How do we actually help dealers become visible, so it'll help the industry in a
Yeah.
whole?
So that's marketing and
And yeah,
storytelling. It's
yeah.
storytelling
Mm-hmm.
through marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
when I say marketing, I'm also just meaning socialization, like through
Mm-hmm.
social media and through socialization in your
Mm-hmm.
community. I think the way that I would choose to operate, and the way I did operate as a dealer, is like we're not over here taking advantage of people. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to support people, and we're trying to make sure they have a good experience, and that obviously
Mm-hmm.
we have a business to run. But if you follow us around long enough, you just kind of never said it, but in the back of my mind is like, you follow us around long enough, you will see that we practice what we preach. We really are trying to make sure the
Mm-hmm.
customer has every opportunity to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
The end.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like
The
the
end.
end. Like follow
Yeah.
us, and so you'll see. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is where I think dealers, as an example, you could start to figure out how to take folks inside these conversations that
Mm-hmm.
happen in your service department. Introduce them to your service manager. Take them inside a conversation you guys just had about, a customer who had a warranty matter, and so
Mm-hmm.
talk about that stuff, because this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
because we're used car people. We sell cars,
Mm-hmm.
and people see us through a lens of salespeople.
Yeah.
So the question is, would I choose to do business with you because you do what you say you're going to do? You have a reputation in the community of doing what you say you're going to do. You follow through, and it's a whole separate conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to coming back and talking
Yeah.
about this whole idea of when you step into doing more than what is promised. Because what we're trying to do is create boundaries. We want to have a level playing field. We want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
we're transparent and clear
Mm-hmm.
about what we do, and that we do what we say we're going to do, and that we expect the customer to do the same.
Yeah.
Right.
So, White Hat Way, Jim and Michelle, all of the things that are, under White Hat Way Incorporated,
Mm-hmm.
V8, Buyer Payer Institute,
Everything
coaching. I mean, all of that is under that. Our part of our mission this year is to really help the industry in two of those three things.
Mm-hmm.
And that is helping be able to message,
Mm-hmm.
and a byproduct is like create a higher level of trust of
Okay.
buy here, pay here
Mm-hmm.
dealers. And the other thing is this whole being able to help dealers get really clean information in front of them so they can compare in a
Mm-hmm.
way that it's like it's clean.
Yeah.
So those are two things. And so what we're asking dealers to bring
Mm-hmm.
is to be open-minded, and to look at the things that can help their business throughout this year, because that is, this whole, the ego part of that as a problem, is we're just asking for dealers, all of those that are out there listening, is be open to learning. And every business owner that's out there, that is like someone, Simon Sinek is learning every day. Elon Musk is learning every day. I mean, some of the giants in industry, Warren Buffett, all that, they will say, learn every day. And when you bring that to your business, that is saying, I don't know everything.
Right.
And that you're open to other ideas, to looking at things from a different perspective, and that we can all rise from some of those other pieces, but just being open to, all right, let's just be open to learning and open to understanding. We don't know all of it. And our business model, although it works for us from our perspective, is that we're open to the idea that there may be different perspectives and different ways that work just as well, and possibly even better than the way that we are doing it now. So be open to learning and being open to understanding. And we do this every day. We don't, you said, I learn every day. And it's because you bring to when you're consulting, it's like there are straight line things that it's like, I've seen a lot of different ways of doing it. This is probably one of the better ways of doing it, that kind of thing. But that we have conversations every day where Jim's coming and he's like, I learned something today.
Yeah.
And so learn.
I think the shortest way to say that around some of these things is like, there's no shortage of opinions out there. Like, and so this is kind of what George is saying about social media, whatever. There's opinions, and some people can call themselves a consultant, but it's like, I think where we can kind of wrap up from my standpoint is like, I would just challenge dealers. I think to make sure that you see the world in a similar way to what we're talking about. Listen, these dealers are busy, right? They're busy. They're churning away. They're trying to build a business. And I would just say two things. Go find Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Maybe watch the expanded version. There's some 5-minute stuff on YouTube, but probably find the 25-minute presentation that he does around Start With Why. And then the other one would be look up some of his stuff on leadership, because leadership, he talks a lot about culture and how leadership, and culture.
He wrote a book called Leaders Eat Last.
Oh yeah,
too, which is a really good book to, that was suggested to me. I can't tell you decades or probably when it first came out. But so it's been over a decade. But yes, so be open to learning. And this is going to be a great year for everybody.
There's a shift already.
There really, really is. And I see it. I feel it. And it's not just in Buy Here, Pay Here. I see a lot of really positive things that are happening got friends in all different industries.
Well,
and
I'm
they're
over
like,
here fanning the flame in the Buy Here, Pay Here. We gotta keep this momentum.
Well, thank you for doing that, Jim. We really, really appreciate it. And we also really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for making us part of your day. This was a long episode, but we covered some really big things, and you're going to see just more and more creation of things that are gonna help dealers. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to always learn and also ask yourself why.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks so much.